Howdy-ho, neighborinos. It's time for your cybersecurity pal to dish out a new helping of Cyber Force Surveillance 101. The topic I'm going to cover this week is one you've been clamoring for me to return to: passwords. People love for me to talk about passwords. People come up to me on the street and ask me, "Keith, when are you going to talk about passwords again?" Okay, I'm totally kidding about that. Nobody wants to talk about passwords. Quite frankly, the topic is about as popular as toe fungus. Unfortunately, we got to talk about them. Now, I know what you're thinking right now. Keith, you ruggedly handsome guy, you, what can you say about passwords that you haven't already said? Well, I'm so glad you asked. As I've mentioned before, I'm a huge fan of password managers. In fact, I cannot imagine anyone functioning securely in the world we live in without one. I'm also not so much a fan of using your browser to store your passwords for you instead. I'm not saying it's a bad option. It's certainly better than the password on a sticky note or using my dog's name everywhere I log in options. Basically, the way I look at it, if you're trusting Google to keep your personal info, I guess you can trust them to keep your passwords too. The excuse I have for bringing up the subject is that I came across a good article by ZDNet about this, written by a guy named Ed Bott, B-O-T-T. And on a side note, I just love the fact that a guy named Ed Bott is writing articles about tech and cybersecurity. This article is helpfully titled, "Password Managers. Is it okay to use your browser's built-in password management tools?" Obviously, I have the link to the article in the notes below, but I'm going to talk just a little bit about it here. Mr. Bott goes over the pros and cons of using your browser for password management. The main pros basically coming down to convenience and cost, since the browsers aren't going to charge you anything for this. However, as he mentions, and which I've mentioned before, there are two possible disadvantages to using your browser to store your passwords. First, by doing so, you're locking yourself into using that particular browser all the time, which for a lot of people doesn't matter at all since they use the same browser all the time anyway. Another possible disadvantage is that a browser simply isn't equipped to do some things which PMs are, such as sharing your passwords with people you trust. Now, let me take just a moment to address anyone here who's decided to just go ahead and let your browser manage your passwords. If you do so, please make sure that you use 2FA on that browser login. Guard that browser login password with your life. You just made that browser your password vault. And if the bad guys get into, say, your Google account, one of the first things they'll look for is a list of stored passwords there. But this article gives you something more. If you, like me, you decide not to use your browser for this, then you need to make sure it's not storing your passwords anyway. Here, he shows you how to tell your browser to stop doing this. And he tells you how to export any passwords it does have so that you can collect them and move them into your password manager. He does this on all the main browsers: Chrome, Edge, Mozilla, and even Safari for Mac users. On a side note, the article does not mention Internet Explorer, and there's a very good reason for that. Just in case, if anyone watching this video just happens to still be using Internet Explorer, you need to stop doing that. It's not secure. I'm not a huge fan of Edge, but Edge is a perfectly acceptable substitute for IE if you still want to stay in Microsoft's world. Anyway, that's it for this week. Please click the subscribe button below if you want to be notified when I put out a new video. Thanks so much for watching, and God bless.